All right, good afternoon, everyone. So it's currently 1:30 and we'll call to order. All right, Happy New Year, everyone. Okay, so we'll kick off by recognizing that we're conducting our business primarily on the territories of the Coopatchesit and T'Swat First Nations, and that we're going to appreciate that fact. Because our meeting is conducted in hybrid format, we also have people coming to you live from Neutral North and even Coast Salish territories. From there, because we're having a meeting that is in hybrid format, we'll have to introduce all of the board members here in the room today, as well as those online, and we'll start with online. And then afterwards, I think what we'll do is before we go to the approval of the agenda, we'll do a quick moment of silence, and I'll introduce that more specifically later. Okay, so online we have several members of the board of directors, some of which are fairly new, but I'll just call you out by name and then we can go to you there. So Bob, please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. Bob Beckett, Area A, Bamfield, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Great, thank you. And Tom?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Tom Steer, appointed director from the District of Tofino, coming to you from Parksville today.
Mariah?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am coming to you from the Thunderbird office. I am still kind of feeling a little sniffly from after the winter break, so I am tucked away in myself all alone. I didn't want to interrupt anyone. I am here representing the Uchuckalsit Tribe government as the executive of Lands and Resources. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And Marilyn?
Good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet, and I am on the traditional territory of the Ucluelet Nation.
And I believe finally online, Lavana?
Good afternoon. My name is Lavana Mastrangelo, joining you from Campbell River, representing Ucluelet First Nation.
All right, thank you for that. We're just doing introductions, Kirsten, and you just joined perfectly. So if you want to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Yep, sorry for being late. It's Kirsten Johnson, representing Tokwat Nation.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's everyone online from the board. We'll go around the table. We'll just do everyone around the table for now. Heather, do you want to start? And we'll go around counterclockwise.
Good afternoon. Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Susan Roth, Beaver Creek Electoral Area.
Happy New Year, everyone. Debbie Haggard, Councillor for the City of Port Alberni and Vice Chair for the Regional District Board.
Mike Sparrow, representing Cherry Creek Electoral District.
Jada Siga, Area C, Long Beach.
Fred Boyko, Director for Beaufort.
Daniel Sayan, the CAO for the ACRD.
And John Jack, Director for Hawaiian and Chair. Okay. So now that we've done our introductions and recognized the territory, talked about the meeting itself. Oh, I should mention as well, because our meeting is in a hybrid format, we do have a question period at the end of the agenda for those of you in the gallery. However, if you have any comments or questions that you'd like to send to us online, we don't monitor the chat nor the chat in YouTube. So if you could send an email to responses@acrd.bc.ca, that would be great. And with that then, that brings us to some sad news. Not too long ago, a former member of the council for the city of Port Alberni, as well as someone who sat at this table alongside us as an alternate member, maybe even as a direct member, Helen Poon recently passed away while on vacation in New Zealand. So this is someone who has had a direct impact on the ACRD, has sat as a director, and I'd like to do a minute of silence in her memory. And if anyone would like to say anything afterwards, that would be more than welcome. So let's start with a minute of silence. And now. Thank you. Now we can open it up for anyone who has anything to say about Helen. I do have something myself, but we can go to others first. Deb, is there anything you'd like to say? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Jack. I first met Helen on the campaign trail in 2018. We were both running for city council. And I kept asking her, why Port Alberni? But she came to Port Alberni on the classic car tour and immediately saw a lot of potential in our community. She invited many of her friends to come and visit, and they did, and they loved Port Alberni just as much as Helen did. After we were both elected, when you're elected to city council, it can be quite overwhelming and there's a big learning curve. And for many months, we would look at each other and say, what did we get ourselves into? Like, we weren't prepared for this much work and how overwhelming it is. And we'd laugh and walk into King's Council chambers together. But she was a colleague, but also became a very, very good friend. She had a big heart and helped a lot of people in need in our community. And she did it without fanfare, expecting anything in return. It was very upsetting over the holidays to learn of her passing. And I hope that her family will takes comfort in knowing that she'll always be remembered. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. So, like Deb, I met Helen slightly before the campaign period in 2018. In fact, I believe I met her first in Whistler. She was, I think, just as a individual, saying hello to local government members and asking questions about whether or not she wanted to be a member of local government, because we were having our Union of BC Municipalities convention in Whistler at that time. And she immediately struck me as someone who was intelligent and had an interest in local government, which is very odd. It's not something that often happens. All of us here are very weird, and she was weird alongside us. And that was appreciated. One thing that I did appreciate as well was just how social and connecting she was. She was someone who knew everyone or introduced herself to everyone. The amount of people that she connected with over these past few conventions, especially once she was in government, she was elected to the Union of BC Municipalities Board of Directors. This is someone that was very connected and helpful, not only in our community, but to the wider local government community of BC itself. And so her loss is deeply felt, not just by this region, not just by the city, I think, but by the entirety of the province. And so her contributions won't be forgotten. And it is something that is a life cut short. And there's a lot of sympathy for her family and friends that are missing her right now, especially given the circumstances of someone passing away so far away from home. So my heart goes out to her friends and family, and on behalf of the regional district as well. So thank you all for taking that minute of silence and for some comments. Are there any other comments that we have? No, thank you. We do have an agenda in front of us, however, so I'm wondering if there are any late items or additional items.
No late items.
No late items, no material, that's great. And if we could have an approval of the agenda to be moved. Thank you, Director Roth, seconded by Director Sparrow. All right. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Okay, so with that brings us into declarations. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest or gifts exceeding $250 in value? Usually conflicts of interest occur in contracting or in planning matters. I don't think there's anything. Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward to the adoption of minutes. The adoption of minutes, item A is the Board of Directors meeting minutes for December 13th, 2023. Would anyone like to move adoption? Thank you, Director Haggard, seconded by Director Roth. Any comments, errors, omissions? Director Sika, go ahead.
Thank you, and I don't know if this is critical or not. I wasn't here for the December meeting, so Kel covered, and He is listed as director as opposed to alternate. I don't know if that's important or not, though.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a correction. That's probably important. Thank you for that. And so we'll make that change. Okay, any further comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, next up is item B, the committee of the whole meeting for December 13th, 2023. That may have the same thing. So, do we have a mover? Thank you, Director Roth. Seconded by Director Siga. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. I believe there's an item C. No, there's not. Yes. So that brings us into petitions, delegations, and presentations. This also includes introductions. So I'd like to take the time to introduce a few of our new members or members of the administration, one of which is Cynthia Dick, who has taken on the General Manager of Administrative Services. Welcome. Daniel, is there anything you wanted to say?
Just that we are, Cynthia was by far the strongest candidate that we had, and we were really pleased to bring her on board and pleased with her interest. She's obviously stepping in for Wendy, who is here for 37 years, and so no pressure, Cynthia. But no, we are really looking forward to working together. She started with us in the first week of January, and is learning quickly and already adding value. So we really appreciate that. And so welcome to the team.
All right, and secondly, we have a new addition to our planning department, Brooke Estrup. Mike, is there anything you'd like to say? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to I think formally introduce Brooke. She has been with the ACRD since the end of November. And as I think we've all seen, she's had reports come to the board and been doing other things since she started here. So it's really helping us move forward, getting through our applications. Brooke does have she comes to us with 5 years of local government experience and a master's degree from UNBC, and we're really happy to have her as part of our team.
And welcome to both of you. I hope to see you happy and contributing productively. And yeah, welcome to the team. It's really good to see you. Okay, and in other news, we have a presentation of a recognition for 25 years of service. I'd like to just bring the mic over to Daniel. If you'd like to go, please go ahead.
Sure. We'll be recognizing Mike Erg today for his 25 years of service. Mike has provided service excellence to the regional district for the last 25 years. He's worked and continues to oversee the areas of planning, long-term and short-term. There's a number of special planning initiatives in the area of housing and agriculture, for example, are two big themes. And most will know Mike's work through the OCPs and zonings and numerous building and bylaw services files that we've seen come across our desk. I do want to say that not only has Mike served the regional district for 25 years, but I'm also pleased to note that as of today, he's also successfully passed probation. It came to my attention not so long ago that over his 25 years, the regional district had forgotten to update his original hiring file, and so technically was on probation for the longest period of time. And I have here with your 25-year presentation, Mike, a letter announcing your successful completion of the ACRD's longest probation period in its history. So
I'm wondering if we should refer this to a committee first, or oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I'd like to thank you for your contributions to the region, Mike, and very much thank you for all of the service that you've provided. Do we want to get a picture of you presenting the ending of your probation? Let's do that. Okay, one moment. Okay, well, thank everyone for that. That brings us to item C. So I'd like to introduce Ms. Diane McKay of Island Health. I believe you're online, so thank you and welcome. Let's make sure you're on there. And if you have a presentation or you'd like to take it away, just know that you have generally a 10-minute maximum to your presentation. And if it doesn't look like you're close to finishing by then, I'll just interrupt you and ask the board if we'd like to continue. The answer for that is usually yes, especially for Island Health, but don't abuse that. With that in mind, though, I'd like to thank you. And you're giving a presentation on capital planning, is that correct?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to meet with you today. Yes, I'll be providing a presentation on the major capital planning process that we undertake when we're looking at replacing our healthcare infrastructure throughout the health authority. So if everyone's ready, I will open up my screen, hopefully, and share the presentation. So is everyone able to hear me all right and see the presentation?
It should be okay. You may want to speak up a bit, but we can see.
I want to speak up a little bit. Okay, I'll sit closer to my laptop. Is this better?
That is, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So when we undertake our capital planning, and in particular major capital planning throughout the health authority, we do so in alignment with the provincial capital asset management framework and the Ministry of Health policies. So major infrastructure projects like healthcare facilities go through a number of steps from conceptualization through to construction and then operationalization and opening of the facilities. What this graphic represents is the timelines for each phase. I mean, what we have here are estimates. It's generally, depending upon the scope, scale, and complexity of the project that we're working on. Sometimes these timelines are extended a little bit past what is shown in this graphic. We start with, a concept plan. We work through business plan, procurement, design, construction, and then on to transition, stabilization, and opening of the facility. There are approval stage gates that we go through with the ministry, and really we don't obviously have any control of that, but those timelines can often add significant amount of time in between each of these periods. So the top graphic here represents the different phases that we go through. The bottom graphic reflects how we increase the scope and intensity of the level of involvement of our clinicians, our staff, and community members in each successive planning stage. Engagement activities start out as relatively limited, but grow with each successive stage as we move through the planning life cycle. So really what this iterates is this is for major capital planning, it's a long process, and it's successive. There's many opportunities to participate throughout the process, and the level of participation grows with each life cycle in the project. The detailed planning and design work really doesn't start until we get into the design and construction phase of these major capital plans. In the concept plan, the purpose of the concept plan is that it really defines the need to either upgrade or replace the current infrastructure. It includes really a broad review of health service needs beyond those just provided in hospital setting, because we really want to ensure that the plan to replace existing infrastructure is part of a comprehensive approach to meet the healthcare needs of the population and the communication and the community that we're constructing the facility in. It also assesses financial implications, both from a capital and an operating perspective of an infrastructure upgrade or replacement, makes preliminary recommendations and possible solutions, and provides the rationale for developing a detailed business plan. So once we complete a concept plan, we submit that to the Ministry of Health, and it goes through an approval process. They take it to Treasury Board with the intention of seeking approval to undertake business plan development. The next step in the process is development of the business plan. And this is really a more robust review into the clinical requirements, leading to preparation of an indicative design so that we can get a more robust cost estimate and really think about the appropriate procurement approach that we would take for the facility. The business plan provides the decision makers, so the Treasury Board, the Minister of Health, minister enough information to commit to procurement and implementation of a specific capital project. It updates and expands the components of the concept plan by providing a more detailed and rigorous review to support the decision making. And it updates and expands on the financial implications of an infrastructure upgrade or replacement. Recommends the procurement methodology, and it outlines the anticipated implementation timelines. So it really focuses on the clinical requirements and the scope of the project, the anticipated schedule, and the capital and operating requirements. That business plan then goes back to the, once it's finalized, goes to the Ministry of Health, who then takes another submission to Treasury Board seeking approval to undertake implementation of the project. Once we get the approval from the province to proceed, we then proceed to the procurement phase, which is really the retention of architectural and engineering consultants that will help us to prepare the detailed design and technical specifications for the infrastructure that we're going to be developing. Allows us to bring on the construction experts and the contractors to actually build the facility. Depending on the procurement methodology, the process can take, like just even the procurement of the consulting resources can take between 3 and 12 months. Once we've got our consultants on board, then we're into preparation of the actual detailed design, technical specifications, so that we can put it out to the market and get pricing and get the constructors on board to start developing the project. Again, depending on the scope, scale, complexity of the project, just the development of detailed design and construction documents can take between 6 and 12 months. And then construction implementation can take between 12 and 48 months. I mean, 12 months is a much lower scale and complexity of construction, whereas 48 months would be, a major hospital construction that would be required. Several months before, about 4 to 6 months before we plan on opening the facility, we start looking at the transition and stabilization of the facility. This is really the transfer of the facility from the oversight of the construction and consultant teams to the health authority, so that we can then start bringing in our clinical team and our operating teams, our maintenance teams, to start getting the building ready for opening day. Again, depending on the scope, scale, and complexity of the facility, this process can take several weeks to several months. For example, like the Cowichan District Hospital redevelopment, that will probably take many, many months just because of the size and complexity of the new facility that they're going to be constructing in the Cowichan Valley. And then once we get to the transition and stabilization phase, we're into the opening of our new facility. that's the presentation. So I'm happy through the chair to take any questions that anyone would have.
Okay, thank you. If you could stop sharing just so I can see the screens. Thank you. Looks like we have Director Steer and then Director Siga for questions. So please go ahead, Tom.
Yes, and thank you very much for your presentation, Diane, and congratulations on the construction phase of the North Cowichan long-awaited project, and we're really looking forward to seeing the completion of that one. The questions, a couple of questions regarding, obviously, as a director from the West Coast region, the Tofino General Hospital and we are potentially, I'm told, in the concept phase of that. And as you pointed out in the graph there was a continuum of consultation around that, and recognizing at this stage in the concept phase that there is a limited consultation and engagement. But I'm curious where we're at with that concept phase in terms of where we are in that timeline, and who would typically be involved in the conversation, the stakeholders that would be involved in the region in those concept phase conversations.
Thank you for the inquiry through the chair. We are at the very early stages of this planning life cycle. So we have started the concept plan development for the replacement of the Tofino General Hospital. We've brought in a consultant team who is working with our clinicians and our building maintenance and operating staff to build our clinical services plan and our functional program. The purpose behind these documents is really to understand the current state of the existing facility, all of the end of life building operating systems in the building itself. Also, the barriers that our clinicians face in the current facility. And then we're working with those teams as well and understanding, using statistical data and analyzing that and looking at projections for the West Coast region into the policy, ministry policy requires we do a 20-year look ahead. So we're doing some crystal ball gazing to think about what, clinical requirements would be, health programs we're projecting for the next 20 years in that area. And that's what's really going to form the basis of the concept plan at this stage. Our targeted timeline for getting our final draft concept plan completed and into the ministry, I'm trying to target May at the latest June, just because Treasury Board doesn't meet through the summer, and then into the fall we're into the election. So I'm really trying to meet targeted timelines to get ahead of that timeline for the election period.
Great, and through the chair, if I could just have a quick follow-up. Just in terms of your presentation and understanding the various phases from concept into the business planning phase. At the business planning phase, as we move into that procurement phase, would it be safe to say if we're proceeding to a business plan phase and that we're moving through that process? I hate to use the word a done deal, but are we fairly confident that we're looking at a green light for a project of this magnitude?
Thank you. Through the chair, once we've got approval from the business plan, once we submit the business plan and we get approval from the province on the business plan, that means that we've got approval to proceed to procurement and implementation of the project as outlined and recommended in the business plan.
Okay, thank you for that. Director Siga?
Thank you. I did notice in your design that you actually identified user group input, and that was in the conceptual planning. And I was gratified that you did recognize the importance of local practitioner input, but it wasn't on your chart, and I was like, just a minute here. So I'm assuming that if you put local practitioners under design and construction input, is that sort of where their input's going to come? Is that?
Thank you. Through the chair. So at the concept plan stage, we are working with our clinicians and our, the staff that, our facility staff that do the operations and maintenance of the existing facility to understand what the current state is. But we're also throughout the process, so throughout concept plan and business plan, and then like right through the planning life cycle, we are bringing in our healthcare practitioners, all of our clinicians, to help us to inform what the future state needs to be from a healthcare perspective for the region.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And one more, Chair. Yeah, I think because Tofino is unique in that the tourist traffic significantly impacts the delivery system. It's not like putting a hospital up in Cowichan. So I'm wondering if you have best practices, models for design that consider the economic needs of the community, like and the stresses of the different economies on healthcare needs. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. So we have taken into consideration the visitation to the region from a tourism perspective. We do have reports from the Board of Tourism and other jurisdictions in the area to help us inform kind of the implications to the healthcare in the region. And recently a business plan was completed for a similar community in the province that also is a rural and remote community, but does see an excessive amount of influx of tourism periodically throughout the year. So we've also incorporated the learnings from that business plan development, and will continue to do so as we move through our planning life cycle.
Thank you. And just one more, if through the chair, if you don't mind. But I just I know people are going to be asking me questions about this. So the other piece of that is there are no long-term care resources on the West Coast at all. So if you have a person who has escape risk, they literally have to go to Duncan or Courtney. And I'm just wondering if there's any consideration to, and the other thing would be people who need respite care. Will there be any services for respite care through the hospital for local care providers? And again, thank you. Sorry.
No, it's my pleasure. That's why I'm here. Through the chair, we will, the programs and services, I mean, we're just at the concept plan stage, we're really just identifying, what the current state is, what our projections are for the future. More of the robust review of the actual programs and services will be undertaken through the business plan development. And we will definitely be looking to our clinical partners to identify all of the programs and services that we feel are currently not being satisfied, and that we should consider incorporating in the future.
All right, thank you for that. Next up, we have Dr. McEwen. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair. The District of Ucluelet has been waiting patiently for some sort of official announcement from Island Health about our new medical center. And the architects have already presented to us, so it's no longer a secret. But just wondering if you are in that loop, if you know when an announcement may be coming.
I'm not in the loop. I am aware that that we've undertaken work with the developer to start the design process for that facility, but I can certainly reach out to my colleagues in communications and see if there's a communique in the work to the region.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. That'd be my pleasure.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? Okay, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, and it's very timely because we're entering into budgeting, so it's perfect. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
Okay. All right, that brings us into the next agenda item, which is a request for action from the Strathcona Regional District Board. Daniel, did you want to introduce this one?
Sure. The Strathcona Regional District Board is wanting to set up a committee amongst the three regional districts that occupy this portion of the island. And the point of the committee is really to make sure that we have discussions around some of the key resources that historically and currently make part of big tracts of the economy. So aquaculture, forestry, and mining. And so that when there are applications or opportunities that are up for review, that we would have a little more consistency between regional districts in terms of comments and concerns, because many or often these activities aren't exclusive to any one region. And so the idea there is that they put forward a request for the ACRD to agree to be part of this. If we would like to be part of it, then they've also attached some terms of reference. Terms of reference, I think, are nice and simple, straightforward. There's one meeting a year, an inaugural meeting a year, unless there's a need for more, in which case then they are called by the chair. The chair is elected at that one meeting per year, and then discussions can take place. The composition of the committee would include the chairs and an additional designated member who's appointed by the board, and room for 6 other nations to be part of this, of course, recognizing that there are non-treaty nations who don't have access to our boards, and so it'd be nice to make sure that the committees reflect that. It's a good idea, certainly in terms of communication, both between regional districts and also with the public.
All right, thank you. I have Dr. Steer and then Director Boyko and then Director Siga.
Yeah, thank you, and through the chair. Daniel, I'm just curious, from a natural resources perspective, you mentioned that I suspect if there is a terms of reference at this point, that aquaculture, forestry, and mining are those top natural resources, but I often think of tourism as natural resources dependent, and I was wondering if you have any information regarding if that is a consideration in the natural resources sector, and as if tourism would be included in that. We are very much dependent on a natural resource in our area, particularly for tourism.
Through the chair, I don't think natural resources were contemplated as part of this, or sorry, tourism was contemplated as part of this, but nothing prevents us from reaching out. So this is the first that we've received from them, and so staff can certainly reach out and look to see whether there's an appetite to expand that. I would certainly imagine that there would be a higher frequency of meetings if tourism was part of this. I know Strathcona has also been facing some pretty interesting times when it comes to tourism as well. And so, if the board would like, we can certainly reach out and explore that.
Yeah, the only additional I would put, and you kind of cover it with aquaculture, is just general fisheries as well. That being said, I think next up is Director Boyko and then Director Siga.
Thank you, Chair. My comment is the things that were mentioned here: agriculture, forestry, mining, natural resources. None of these fall under regional district governance. Agriculture is federal, forestry is provincial, mining is provincial. What influence will this committee actually have? A, is it relevant? Is it actually going to be able to do anything? Just as a devil's advocate. Second thing, one thing that is relevant to this particular board and is getting access to the mosaic ways out of this town, because this road keeps getting shut down every month and it's not going to stop. And I see that way to actually be relevant in this. But most everything else, I don't see much relevance at all. Maybe that could be brought up. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have Dr. Siga and then Dr. Mastrangelo.
Thank you very much. I see it as very relevant. What is falling apart with our environment is lack of local input. The Clayoquot Biosphere Trusts were set up with that in mind, trying to preserve the health and well-being of our communities and our environments. And if we don't take that on and have some local control, the same old patterns of top-down management are going to destroy us. And yeah, so I see it as very important. And I think the only thing that I would suggest is to include the Clayoquot or the Biosphere Trust, because they already have a working group and are working closely with First Nations on these concepts. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Next up is Director Mastrangelo. Did I miss anybody? No, please go ahead.
Thank you. Question on those that are currently participating, would that be representatives also from each of those companies or corporations, or are there people sitting at that table that are also going to be coming from companies representing them, giving those like annual reports on what they're doing or what they've changed? Yeah, I do question the ability to have influence, but I see it as a community engagement piece, and that's really important when it comes to licensing. So that would be, yeah, I think it's a good thing, but I'm just curious on who else is sitting on that board, and what does that look like for those coming from the companies and them coming to us or that board.
Thanks for that. I think the answer to that question is the only membership of the committee would be the chairpersons and one member from each regional district board. It does state, though, that they would be receiving and sharing information about the resource sector, which may include not just government, but also maybe receiving reports from companies as well. So how that gets managed is not really covered by this terms. It would rather be how the chairperson of this committee would run it, which leads a lot of questions to be answered as a result of that. So I don't know, Mark, at all. So I don't know what's behind this and what the intent is. I do know that in the Strathcona Regional District, there are plenty of communities that are dependent on natural resources. So I would expect that the advocacy would be on behalf of things like fiber supply and keeping mills running and so on and so forth. However, that's just speculation on my part. Any further comments or conversations? Dr. Sparrow?
Thank you. So in Cherry Creek, most of Cherry Creek does not bump against any of the regional districts, but rather Nanaimo, including the Cherry Creek watershed area. So it's a great idea to look at all the management and the capital blocks and see what can be done to manage our watershed areas. But however, is there any talk or any reference to use the top 2 or 3 parts of the regional district of Nanaimo to come into this so we can look at protecting our watershed in Cherry Creek, or is that outside the purview of what's being said here? Because it seems to be just top half of the island and us a little bit. They are not part of the discussions?
Yeah, I think what's not being stated, and that's a really good observation, is that this is timed with the provincial election almost too well. So it's clear that the North Island and our part of the island may be part of whatever's being considered here. So I don't know what it looks like from that perspective, but I would expect the plan would be for an agenda to be moved forward so that questions can be brought to the government as well as the opposition to see what their positions would be and how that would affect the communities. That's what I expect it to be at that point. And there could be utility there, especially given a lot of the forestry companies have major offices in Nanaimo. It's probably a good idea to contemplate involving them there. Although looking at the politics and the politics of Nanaimo Council, it's a bit different, right? If they're large enough that they have their own momentum as well. So that might be part of the considerations. I think what we may want to do is hold off on this, but forward some questions about what this may look like and what it's more intended to be. Because I think our communities have something in common in regard to the resource sector, but I think specifically our regional district also has other interests that may be going in a different direction, as Director Steer has pointed out, and as Director Seega has pointed out. We're looking at the value of the biosphere as well as the resources on the land in a way that may not be contemplated by Strathcona or Waddington. And I think more questions can be answered by just forwarding some questions before we join. We could just defer this to the next thing, and Daniel and I can follow up at that point. Defer or delay. Yeah. Would you like to move that? Sure. Director Roth has moved that. Seconded by Director Segan. So we will report back next month, maybe the first meeting in next month. And if we run out of time, we're gonna run out of time. I'm not too worried about that either. Yeah. Okay. Any further comments? Okay. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Director. Okay. That brings us to item 7, correspondence for information. Would anyone like to pull anything out? Director Haggard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Jack. INEO Employment Services is having an invitation for their reuse store grand opening on Saturday. I met with Terry this morning on other things, but she asked me to let you know that they're going to have a ribbon cutting at 10:30. If any staff or directors would like to go, that would be a good time to go. And she also asked someone from the regional district to speak and say a few words. So Chair Jack, I don't know if you're available to come. If not, I'm happy to speak on your behalf.
Which is that?
That's on Saturday, 16th. Okay, perfect. I'll be there anyway. So if you don't show up, I'll be happy to speak.
Would anyone like to pull anything else out? Director Sparrow?
Thank you for that. I look in here at an Emergency and Disaster Management Act. There's a few regional districts that are complaining of a timeline they're being given to implement what they want to do. And how are we doing in that regards? Are we okay with what we're doing, or do we need to ask for a little further time?
Thank you for that. I think there are things where we can have the work done, but whether or not we're being considered in a fulsome way, I don't know that it's covered in the Emergency and Disaster Management Act, but in the past few instances of the road being closed, we have run into some major hitches in regards to how our stranded folks are being treated in the valley, but also outside of the valley as well. Daniel, do you want to say anything about that?
I think on our end, the outreach, we certainly feel like we've had ample outreach and opportunity to provide the feedback, but certainly on the application of the new regulations, there's our first example, which was at Christmas Day, was a cautionary tale where the plans that we had agreed to were not adhered to on the provincial side, which then caused delays and a ruckus on our side. And I do know our MLA is following up, and I've shared information, and so she's following up with Minister Ma. But there are certainly problems on that front, and as we've already expressed, the costs as we put more and more of an onus on top of volunteers over time. I think we understand the reality. We've seen this happen with fire departments. You increase the ante through provincial legislation, and the expectations were now our volunteers are expected to be at the same caliber as professionals, but free. And the math just doesn't add up over time. So we certainly have concerns about the long-term carrying costs of the changes that they're proposing and who's going to have to carry those costs.
I think some of the engagement has been not necessarily directed, but it has been the momentum is in terms of the province requiring a lot of things of what it is we're going to do without contemplating the cost or the time it takes to get people to capacity, and relying on volunteers, as you said, is going to be harder and harder as inflation in the economy slides into recession, people won't have the time to do this kind of stuff without getting paid to do it. And so this needs to be considered more carefully. And there are a lot of instances where it's not working. And so we do need to maybe join the conversation. Maybe we should express our considerations a bit differently than some of these letters, but that's fine. What we do next, I think, is maybe subject to another conversation or report. I don't know. It's, given what happened over Christmas, that's something that we need to contemplate between regulations. And there's interplay between EMCR and housing. And so those are things that need to be smoothed out. And I don't know necessarily who to start with at that point, whether or not it's Minister Ma or if it's Ravi, but we'll see. So, yeah, is there a follow-up? Go ahead.
In regards to Christmas Day, because you could come here a better day, that would sound. And you did reach out to the ministry. Would it be prudent for us to get a letter behind that too, to put a weight behind it? Is that something we should be looking at to try and say, and also for the advisory committee on the transportation side, saying, hey, we have this letter and they failed, so we can prove that, so we can put more teeth into it. Is that something we should look at?
Yeah, I would certainly endorse staff drafting a letter that the board could review at the next meeting and then send out. There's a lot of details and nuanced things that occurred as a result of the decisions from EMCR. That MOTI was asking people not to travel the route that is not maintained. And by default of the decisions from EMCR, many people, I would argue, rightfully opted to take the risk and drive the route, even though it's not maintained. And that driving was not without incident. That was certainly flagged with us as well. So there are a number of problems, and I see Director Steer's hand up, and that was one of the questions I have around this too, is yet again, the economic impacts. What did that mean for cancellations for New Year's in Tofino or elsewhere? And every time this message goes out, every business in the Alberni Valley through to the West Coast feels the impact of people reconsidering their decisions.
Director Steer?
Thank you. I guess, Daniel, you did read my mind a little bit. And somewhat unrelated, but it was a question back to staff. Under the new act, the responsibilities of local government have increased substantially. And I'm just wanting to know from a staff perspective, if you feel that the increased responsibilities under the act for local government, if you have sufficient resources within our planning, emergency planning department to take care of those new responsibilities, and if not, if that is something else that could be alliterated to within our potential letter to the province.
We can certainly add that angle as well. Yes.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any further comments or questions? I do. The item E, the letter from the city of Fort St. John in regards to criminal activity and social disorder. I think we need to contemplate having a conversation with the province about making sure that our RCMP detachment is well resourced. I think they're still waiting to get an officer in charge, as well as just having not as many officers as they need to have. I don't know if Tofino's in the same situation. I know that there's a detachment out there, but we were, as far as I could tell, fairly effective in addressing prolific offenders in the past few years when there was focus on it, and lacking an officer in charge leads me to believe that that may be something that drops by the wayside. So I wouldn't mind having a conversation later with the city as well in regards to how this may look. But outside of the application of the Community Safeties Act and the Safer Communities Act and all of those sorts of things, and contemplating BC Supreme Court decision, I think that's outside of our ken. But talking about coverage of the RCMP will matter, especially the most effective way to address some of these things is having a strategy on prolific offenders. And I just want to make sure that we're continually focusing on that. I don't think that requires a motion or anything. I just want to say that that's something we should contemplate in the new year. With that in mind, are there any other comments or questions? And if not, we could have a motion to receive, and then we can do a motion for that letter, unless that's just something to be done.
Motion for letter.
Yeah, motion for a letter afterwards. Okay. Thank you, Director Siga, seconded by Director Boyko. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. And Director Sparrow, would you like to move the direction to have a letter created? Just what we talked about. You don't need to redo the motion.
Don't do word for word what I
No.
said.
Yeah.
If we, write a letter to the ministry involved regarding the incident on December 25th.
Yeah, I think that's sufficient. And do we have a seconder? Thank you, everyone. Director Haggard. Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, thank you for that. That brings us to item 8, which is request for decisions and bylaws. So item 8A, what are we doing last time? 2:30. So we have Jenny here, who's going to talk about the City of Port Alberni bulk water agreement rate letter. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This originally came to the board in camera in September, and we have since had follow-up meetings with the City of Port Alberni, and then as well, we took it to the Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee that was passed by the board to reference or refer it to them. So this is with regards to the city's, the bulk water agreement between Beaver Creek and the city. And we have looked to extend the boundaries, and the city took that opportunity to review the bylaw, the agreement, and they determined that they wanted to make some changes to the agreement. When we met with them to discuss that further, they said that they're really looking at a lot of their agreements and looking to update that language and address that, as well as do long-term planning for the city's water system, because they're really concerned about whether the rates that they've established are full cost recovery for all of their bulk water users. So they've invited us to work with them as they go through the master planning process, and we're happy to do that with them and work on developing a new bulk water agreement. We have 2 years until the existing one expires. We presented that information as well as the original information to the Beaver Creek Water Committee. They supported that, as well as supporting looking at a alternate water supply for Beaver Creek. So that would be an engineering investigation study. And so we have both of those items on our 2024 work plan tentatively. If the board supports that, we are moving forward. We've added the master plan, the supply study onto our work plan. And as well, we're looking for the board to support and direct staff to work with the City of Port Alberni on the planning and the new bulk water agreement.
Okay, thank you. So with that, do we have any comments or questions or motions? Director Roth, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to move that the ACRD Board of Directors direct staff to continue to work with the City of Port Alberni on the city's water master planning and rate structure update, as well as work towards drafting an updated bulk water agreement for consideration, but also include the intent of an updated bulk water agreement is to use it as a temporary measure and a backup to an upgraded water system in Beaver Creek that includes advanced water treatment. Yeah. So because there's a deadline of December 2025, we need to extend that. So it definitely, the intent of an updated bulk water agreement, to an upgraded water system in Beaver Creek that includes advanced water treatment.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Boyko. Any further comments? Director Boyko.
I think in the area of basically emergency preparedness, having another system available for water in the area is always a good plan. My question is, maybe Jenny, you can help me on this one. What do people in Port Alberni pay overall, besides the cost of water, compared to what people in Beaver Creek pay? Not just for the bulk water player, which is only 10 to 15% of their total cost. Is the people of Beaver Creek already paying a lot more than the City of Port Alberni without this adjustment? And how will it change? Thank you.
Through the chair, that's a great question. I'd really want to double check with the city before I spoke specifically about how their water rates work. When we're talking about just the water rates that we pay in Beaver Creek, we pay 75% of the residential rate. When we were talking about that, it is a big complicated issue because there's your capital investment, and there's your operating costs, there's the indirect costs, there's a lot of things that build into water costs for a system. And I think that's one of the challenges that the city is facing, and trying to look at fair and equitable rates that make sense. And so does that mean that they want to look at a base rate and then you include the like the usage on top of that? I don't think I'm giving any more information, but I can look into that and provide more information back to the board.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments? Sorry, I missed you. Go ahead, Dr. Sparrow.
It's all good. I have actually a comment or a statement in here regarding the city, actually. It says, to this end, the city is going to be issuing an RFP in early 2024 to undertake a master planning process of the water system and will identify all the future capital costs, future capital works, and determine a rate structure that covers the capital, operating, and administrative costs involved with water system operations. Is that going to include your 4321 part of that inside your capital costs? You don't know that answer? Okay.
I think that's a good question. Jenny, we're nodding, but I think that's stating that it's a good thing to consider.
Through the chair, yeah, excellent and good point. In our discussions with the city, that is their intent. So that also includes watershed protection, right? And dealing with the water source and really looking at the wholesome long-term management of the water system for the city and what that looks like, long-term master plan, costs associated. So, yes.
And I think this conversation is why the additional intent was added, just so folks know, even if it's there, we are investigating other opportunities to keep either costs down or more reliability or control over the water system as a result. So this would be a temporary measure. This probably would be built into the agreement anyway. Okay, so with that, do we have any other comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, next item is the asset requirement obligation policy. Terry, I think you're online. Are you here now? No, you're online. Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So we've talked about this for a few years now. This is a public sector accounting board standard that is going to be required for our financial statements for December 31st, 2023, which we're just starting to prepare. So it just is a policy to standardize the process and lay it out for staff to understand, as well as the auditors. So happy to answer any questions. I will state that it's a pretty standard policy based on what other areas are doing. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director Blanco, go ahead.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Chair. So this is basically any ACRD only assets that they will be mandatorily retired at a certain age. Is that the intent of this? So even if it's still functioning, say a septic system is still functioning, but it hits 20 years old or whatever that age will be, it will be mandatorily retired at a new one built. Is that the intent?
It's to record the costs, the legal obligation of costs to retire or to remediate something. So the best example is probably asbestos. There's no obligation for us to remediate asbestos in all of our buildings today. However, I need to figure out what the estimated cost when we go to do that, which we're going to anticipate is at the end of its useful life, into it. And it truly is an accounting exercise. It's going to increase the cost of our asset, and it's going to create a liability on our books. Likely this will remain unfunded until we get to that point. But as we talk long-term financial plan, capital reserve balances, it is something they're saying we have to recognize and record. Another example will be the landfills. Basically, the day you open a cell in a landfill, you are going to have to record the cost of closing that landfill on your books. So currently we do an obligation that's based on how much room is remaining or how much space we have or tonnage we have put into that landfill and what is the estimated size of that landfill at the end of its life. And it was kind of done over as that liability increased as the as the usage became more. Now that day that thing's open, we're putting the whole closure cost and making estimates every year. There's lots of assumptions in these, such as inflation rates, discount rates, closure years, conditions, and all those wonderful things. But we're hoping to make it as simple as possible. One of the things to note is a lot of our agreements with the province have retirement obligations. And that was very concerning to us as finance staff when we first started this discussion. However, if we have a trail, for example, the Log Train Trail has an agreement that states if we give it back, we need to give it back in the state that it was given to us, which at that time was train grade. But as long as we are not intending on giving it back, so if the board made direction to say we want to discontinue use of the Log Train Trail in 5 years, that would trigger an ARO from a finance standpoint. We'd need to estimate the cost of doing such and put it on our books. So there's some that could pop up, and it's going to be an annual review exercise, but nothing like the amount of work we've had to go through and read every agreement that we have signed and look at all of our assets and research these legal obligations. So for the most part, we've narrowed it down to landfills, septic fields, asbestos and lead in buildings. And I feel like I'm forgetting one, but I think those are the 3 major ones anyways.
Thank you for the explanation, Terry.
Go ahead, Director Haggard.
So Terry, is this something new in the general accepted accounting practices that's just come up?
Yeah, it's through the public sector. So as a local government, we fall under the Public Sector Accounting Board standards. And so it's through this PSAB that is required. And it's not optional in the way that our municipal finance rating is based on the audited financial statements of all the municipalities in BC. And so if we didn't comply, then MFA would be a little upset, never mind the ministry, but it would impact our provincial ability to pay. So it is definitely an accounting exercise, but we are following all the processes and trying to make it as simple as possible with our auditors so that it can be updated with minimal amount of work, hopefully.
Insurance rates too. Dr. Steer.
Yes, I was just going to move that the Board of Directors adopt the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Asset Retirement Obligation Policy.
Thank you for saving us, Director Steer. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roth. Okay, any further comments? Director Sparrow, go ahead.
Thank you. How would this work if we were to require another service and they did have lead paint and asbestos and other? How would that work with our liability? Would we be able to incur that, or we have to put that on the onus on the service before we pick it up?
Basically, the service that the retirement obligation belongs to will be what funds it in the end. At this point, it is going to be an unfunded liability for us. So there wouldn't be any immediate financial impact, but definitely if Long Beach Airport, we got a lot of asbestos and lead just due to the age of the buildings out there. So when it comes time to remediate those buildings, it will definitely be the Long Beach Airport service that is paying for that. So just as if we were to have a whole bunch of new donated assets or contributed assets from somewhere else, it would be the same approach.
All good? Yeah, okay. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. All right, that brings us to item C, which is a request for decision regarding the Log Train Trail Management Plan. Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So this report and plan came to the Committee of the Whole in December, and the committee reviewed the plan. We had a presentation from our consultant and Michael, and a lot of great discussion, which has resulted in the the first 4 resolutions. And then I also want to mention that another resolution that came as part of that discussion was the last one, which is to investigate options to consider local input into the development of a regional parks and trails committee and report back. And so we have heard that. We're putting it on the list, and we will report back to the board with the options on what that will look like. As far as the Log Train Trail Regional Park Management Plan is concerned, we have the cover reports from the committee. Just a quick summary. We do have significant amount of ATV traffic on the log train trail existing, which is about 50%. That is an unauthorized or unsanctioned use under our current plan. So in the development of the plan, that was one of the biggest topics that we ended up discussing. We had significant engagement throughout the plan with stakeholder interviews, public surveys, an open house, and a public workshop in phase 1. We have an established Let's Connect website where we directed people to where they could access all of the information and results from the surveys throughout the entire process. We brought an options report to the board and we discussed that critical decision, which was the allowable uses. And we really wanted feedback from the board before we went ahead and developed a draft plan to again engage with the community on. There was support to address the issue, which is that the current use, the current allowable use does not reflect the actual use, and we are hearing will from the community in the initial engagement that we open up and make it a multimodal trail. So we then developed a draft plan following that and then engaged with the community again. So we did stakeholder engagement, another public survey, and as I mentioned, we presented the draft plan to the committee of the whole. So before you is the updated plan. One of the issues that we discussed at the committee of the whole was a discussion about the level of service. So we have modified the plan within there to reflect what was resolved at the committee, which is that for the engineered assets, we will have a level of 3 service, and for the trail itself, it will be a level of 4. I would like to note that staff recognized from that discussion that there is some it's not as clear as it could be because we're using a parts level of service standard for a trail. So we think that it won't be that much effort to go through and just bring back to the board some level of services specific to trails so that the language is clearer and easier to understand with context to trails. So we'll just look at the best practices out there and pick the best one and bring it to the board later this year. That is on our work plan. And then if the board does support the resolutions as presented in the plan, one of our key first steps for implementation is the development of a transition plan. So this will be a huge change when we sanction the uses that are currently happening already, because our objective is to actually make the trail user-friendly for everyone. So we want to do engagement with everyone, including the current motorized users, the associations that are that, as well as a lot of the people who use the trail as it is, to come up with a very functional transition plan. We will be coming back to the board to present the plan before we move forward with that. So really, the Log Train Trail Management Plan that is presented before you, and we're recommending that it is adopted, is the first step. And there's going to be a lot of work. It is a big plan with a big work plan. And so we'll continue to talk about this. But today we have resolutions that basically provide direction to staff to move forward with those. And we will be working with the public as we continue. I am happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Haggard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jenny, I'm wondering, by allowing motorized vehicles on the trail now, how does that affect our assurance and our liability?
Through the chair, that is a great question that has come up through the process. So we have talked to MIA, and there is no increased liability because we already have the motorized use on the trail. They've given us some suggestions, which we have incorporated, that how we mitigate our risk, and that'll be the same throughout all the trails. A lot of it is about policy and signage, and so that'll also be part of our transition plan. In theory, we will be in a reduced risk situation by addressing the existing uses that are happening.
Thank you. Director Beckett next.
Thank you, Chair. On January 9th, I believe that the board and staff may have received an email from a group of folks representing a number of residents from the Cherry Creek community. And I don't know who has read it or who did receive it. The question that was posed to me was, would the board considering deferring acting on this matter today to give staff an opportunity to meet with them and bring it back for next month's meeting? So I'll stop there for consideration and discussion, Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So we've been talking about this for 13, 14 months now. We had our first public hearing December 2022. We had one in April 2023, and then we had another survey. The time for public input, we've had it for 14 months now. The people that live there have plenty of time to put their ideas forward. I'm sure they all went to the meetings and put their heads forward. I'm ready to move forward with this. There's a clear mandate. 80% of the people want to have motorized vehicles on there. We have our direction from the people. Let's action it and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Dr. Sparrow and then Dr. Haggard.
Thank you for that. There's two areas that are affected by this, Beaufort and Cherry Creek. And lucky for me in Cherry Creek, I happen to be the only area where the houses are right against the trail. And you have to, in one spot, get off the trail onto the road to get back on the trail. So that kind of adds a little crinkle to everything going on here, because quads have to get off the recognized trail onto a legal road. So hopefully they're all licensed, but some of the concerns that have been brought up is we need to actually have a gate up at the end of Timber Lane Road? No, Andrews Lane. Because they can get access on there. Apparently there is small SUVs getting on there, like tractors and those sort of vehicles, and no, they are on the log train trail besides the quad. So I don't know if we can pull that apart with a Modi and see if we can get those off the trail. Other things we have a level 4 for our level of service on the trails, but we're gonna do it through volunteers, but I don't know A, who the volunteer groups are, and B, how they're insured, and see who's going to direct them on what they're doing, because it's all fine and dandy for a guy to go there on a quad, cut a tree down, but if it kicks back and disables them, who trained them, who's liable, where's all this going? And secondly, there is I have sent pictures in of a bridge that was under duress, we'll call it. And they said they went there and they fixed it. Well, I got a picture today, and it's not quite up to a standard I would think we should be up to for a fix. But so we have to figure out who the volunteers are, on who's going to train them, to what level are we going to train them to get them to come within our insurance liabilities, and are we liable to the people doing the work? So there are a lot of questions that I'm going to have moving forward, along with the usage of the trail. But yes, we have to look at all these issues, I think, before we go too far on. I know it's been a long time, but I don't want to get somebody injured out there that shouldn't get injured. Then we need to do maintenance on it somehow. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Beckett.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, colleagues. Through the chair to Jenny, if we assume this gets passed, what's proposed today, how do we circle back, and can you please just a Reader's Digest version of what additional consultation, working with the community, addressing Director Sparrow's concerns, how does that look? And can you speak to that briefly, please?
Go ahead.
Through the chair, so I think the next key step is really the transition plan. I did see the email from the concerned citizens, and I love the passion for the log train trail, and everyone wants to use it, and we need to try to develop a plan that will work for everyone. That is going to be the intent moving forward with that development of the transition plan. So that nothing's going to change overnight, and that plan will come back to the board. We will engage with both walkers, hikers, all of our associations, and a lot of our volunteers and people who have been longstanding and involved in the log train trail, which is the list of those people who are from Cherry Creek. So we see that as part of the development of a good transition plan. We don't want to make a change. The trail isn't working as well as it could. The intent is to make it work better. So how do we accommodate all of those and reduce the user conflict that we have right now? I think that timeline-wise, we would probably look at something in the second or third quarter coming back to the board, depending on how long the timeline is. We would then look at making the application to Modi to possibly work at that. So again, we're looking about a year out, and a lot of that transition plan is probably going to involve really good signage, right? And, agreement from the different organizations and associations to be a little bit self-policing, because they have offered that up in some of the workshops that, we think we can all work together cooperatively. So I think I can guarantee that, we will absolutely do more engagement as we develop a plan and move forward. We will take our time. We will make sure that it's not going to be easy. Change is hard, but that we will have people involved and hopefully iron out the wrinkles as we go.
Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you, Jenny. I think that's a good way forward, having increased, continued public engagement moving forward. People are passionate on this topic for a variety of reasons. And one of the things is just having a simple statement of how the priority of people yielding to other people. We've already discussed all that to death, but just get it formalized in writing. I don't think there'll be any disagreements to what's already been proposed in the past, and just move forward.
I have a question. Is that contemplated to be in signage as well, just so people can, Jenny has indicated yes, for those of you watching. Director Haggard and then Director Sparrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Brokaw alluded to the survey numbers, and this is what the people wanted. If I remember correctly, the total number of people who responded to the survey was quite low. And I do know that an open house that was held, I think it was McLean Mill, it seemed to be very lopsided with ATV people who really come and voice their very vocal opinion. So I think there is a lot of people out there. We always have to think it's not just a certain segment of the population that we're representing. We have to represent the entire Alberni Valley. And I think there's a large segment of that population who does not want ATVers on this log train trail. And I know you're going to raise your hand and speak against me, so that's fine. I knew you would. So I would prefer, we also have an opportunity to create a real economic generator with this log train trail if we don't have multimodal transportation on it. So my preference is to not have it on there unless we can come forward with a really good plan that both walkers and bikers and hikers can work closely together with ATVers, and that's going to be a respectful partnership. And I would like to see that partnership or what that's going to look like before I can support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Sparrow and then Director Black.
Thank you for that. Well, my major concern right now is the maintenance of the trail. We're into a muddy season right now, and with the potholes are out there, they're getting worse. I was out there today again. So although we said we'll leave it to volunteers to do it, how do we support them in what way, and who are the volunteers? What groups are we looking at? And like I said, we go back to liabilities and seeing who's going to manage what and how they're going to get the equipment out there to do it, and how we can put that into the plan almost starting today, because we're deteriorating down. And if we do decide one day to give it back, we have to build it back up to what we want. So we have to keep it where we're at least for now. So how are we going to put that forward in the next year, I guess you said, before we get any further? So
thank you. I have Director Boyko, then Director Siga. Oh, sorry, Jenny, I missed you. Jenny, do you want to go first? Go ahead.
I can respond, or we can just have comments and I can speak to it.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, we do have maintenance money available to work on the improvements of the log train trail, and we have been kind of rolling that forward for this last year. We focused on the plan, so we do expect to have some of that maintenance stuff done as well. You mentioned the bridge. That was an interim fix that we've done, so we do have a long-term plan to replace that board. We have some work there, so I appreciate that because I use it as well, and I know that there's maintenance required.
Thank you. Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm just going through the different stakeholder inroads and public surveys and open houses. Yes, there was a lot of ATV people that showed up. They're passionate people. They want to have their voice heard, and I believe they did make their voice heard. The people showed up at the one that we had at Rescue Hollow, and people showed up at the one that we had at the Plains Mill. There's also a public survey that if people wanted to put in their voices anonymously. They had 286 people show up. So in Beaufort and Beaver Creek, which is where the Love Train Trail is, there's roughly 3,000 people. And it is a place for the whole valley, but we had 428 responses, 14.3% participation, compared to what we were talking about yesterday, where we had 3.7% responses to the aquatic center. We're considering that a viable response. I'm saying having 14.3% of the people responding is a good mandate from the people, and we as a board are responsible for listening to what people want. Thank you.
Dr. Siga, did you have a comment?
Thank you. I just want to go back to the point of whether this is going to be an economic driver or an economic gain for the government. Maintaining a trail for heavy ATV use is significantly more expensive, and bridges will be significantly more expensive than a bike trail or a walking path. So I see, unless somehow the ATV community is thinking of economic drivers, I see this as a net loss for the governments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bucko.
So I'll just bring that up. So currently 52% of the traffic on the trail is ATV users right now. So, well, it's muddy, it's winter. That being said, the ATV quad people, whatever you want to call them, are currently doing all the maintenance already. Tree falls down, as I've said and been promoted many times in the past, horses don't carry chainsaws to fix a trail, right? Quads are the people that are maintaining the trail already. They propose that they want to keep doing this and keep moving it forward. Now, with regard to bridges, I would say that the footprint and PSI per foot of a horse hoof is much more than a spread out quad on 4 tires, right? So the pressure of making it a bridge suitable for horses has to be much stronger than for a quad. With same width. So saying that a bridge will cost more because a quad is going on it or a side by side or whatever, I don't think that's valid from an engineering standpoint. It'll have to be stronger for an actual horse to go over anyways. Just because the point load is this big for a 1,000-pound horse plus a person, and a 600-pound quad plus a person is a much more spread. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Siga, you have to use your, and then we'll go to Dr.
Through the chair, this is a good discussion. I'm wondering if horse traffic is compatible with quad traffic, because I know when I'm riding my bicycle on a path, I haul my bike right off because I don't want to be near the horse. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's contemplated in the kind of order of precedence for how it works. Yeah, like it would be posted, people would know. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. We've talked about the interaction between horses, bicyclists, hikers, quad people quite over the past 14 months in varying levels of detail. It all comes down to motorized people yield to people that are not on motors, and people that are on bicycles and hikers yield to the horses because they are the most skittish, and that is the best plan for everything. It's a very simple sentence that puts us all together, and I've already said it once. But the management of having a multi-use path, it already exists, and it's just formalizing this agreement.
Yeah, it's horses, hikers, bikes, and quads in that order, isn't it? Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, from up, going up. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. Okay, so with that in mind, I think we should close off comments on this, because I will remind the board that even if someone believes that the engagement hasn't been good enough or others have, when the question brought up, then we just default back to what the board decides. We don't need to talk about percentages or real terms, especially if it's just going to be rhetorical. So Director Haggard, please go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, in response to Director Borko's comments a couple of minutes ago, was the long-term trail is not just in Beaver Creek and Beaufort, it's also in Cherry Creek and through the city of Port Alberni.
It's not in Beaver Creek. No, all I said was it's in Cherry Creek.
Oh, I thought you said Beaver Creek and Beaufort. Okay, fine.
I don't know.
Having walked the trail. Yeah.
And one point of clarity, which can be very confusing and for the public who's listening, is that this plan is for only the regional district managed portion of the trail, not within the city. So there will be no changes to the city portion of the log train trail. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot that we should absolutely mention that for clarity.
Yes, to be continued. Okay, any further comments? If you'd like to go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a motion that the ACRD Board of Directors adopt the Log Train Trail Management Regional Park Management Plan.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Roth. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Now you can just continue.
Thank you, Chair. Make a motion that the Board of Directors direct staff to incorporate operational action items into the 2024-2028 work plan and regional parks service financial.
Thank you, Director Roth, for seconding. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Chair. Make a motion that the ACRD Board of Directors direct staff to update the Log Train Trail lease agreement with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to reflect the Log Train Trail Management Plan.
Thank you, Director Roth. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you, Chair. Make a motion that the ACRD Board of Directors direct staff to investigate expanding the ACRD managed area of the Log Train Trail network to improve access and connectivity to the main trail corridor.
Seconded by Director Roth. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried.
Thank you, Chair. Make a motion that the ACRD Board of Directors direct staff to investigate options to consider local input into the development of the regional parks and trails and report back.
Thank you, Director Roth. Just for clarification, the Regional Parks and Trails Service Committee, thank you. What I said would be scary for some. Okay, so a committee. Further comments? Director Boyko?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I think continuing local input is going to be one of the key factors moving forward to make sure that as much as possible, good is done for the greater good, but everybody is heard as well. So making the signage that includes language that's very straightforward and simple with regard to yielding to certain people or whatever it is, everybody gets input, but I think the plan should be as already directed, quite simple, one sentence and move forward. But I think moving forward, that'll be great to have that engagement. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. I did have a question for Jenny. Is the motion that incorporates operational action items, does that include the transition plan that you were talking about? It does? She has indicated yes. Okay, thank you. All right, with that, that brings us to item D, which is grant funding application of the BC Air Access Program for the Alberni Valley Regional Airport. Jenny, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So we are looking for a resolution to put a grant application into the British Columbia Air Access Program for the construction of a maintenance and storage building at the Alberni Valley Regional Airport. This is a funding program that opens generally annually and provides 60% funding of capital projects. This is an eligible project and is on our work plan. We've got an updated cost estimate, and it would provide approximately $600,000 out of an $800,000 capital project.
Thank you. Any comments or questions, Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you. Jenny, was this the thing that was on the budget about a year ago to be estimated at $400,000, and then the first cost estimate came in at $550,000, $600,000, and you said that's way too expensive, but now we're looking to go forward with this at an $800,000 to $900,000 budget. That's correct?
Through the chair. So the background on this is we actually issued a tender based on engineering cost estimates, and we had it combined. It was 2 buildings, one at Long Beach and one at Abra. When the cost estimates came in, they were significantly higher than expected. That was during COVID, and when we did an assessment to see why the engineering cost estimate was off so much, a lot of it was steel. This estimate is based on the fact that we have seen those elevated costs. So this is likely to be an accurate cost estimate for the project. However, one small note, we just closed a tender and the initial cost estimates are showing that maybe the prices are coming down. So hopefully we might see at the very least a leveling of price increases in capital projects.
Dr. Sparrow.
I wasn't here last year, but how big is this building for 800 grand?
I don't actually have the square footage. It's a reasonably sized building. Like, it's intended to hold 3 large, like it would fit 4 loaders. So if you can visualize that. So it's a significantly large building for all of our equipment storage. We currently don't have a space to store like snow plows or any equipment that we have on the site. So they degrade from just weather. And for the interim, we would only have a few pieces of equipment, but it is sort of a standard size.
This is a grant money to help assuage that cost as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's from the province or the federal government, so it's completely out of our ken. We just talked about that. So with that, any further comments? Do we have a motion, Director Haggard?
I'd like to make the motion. I'd like to move that the Alberni-Quicklot Regional District Board of Directors support the grant funding application to British Columbia Air Access Program for the construction of a maintenance and storage building at Alberni Valley Regional Airport.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Boyko. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And then this is just the second half of that for YAZ, for his head. Yeah.
Through the chair, that's correct. And this one is for a generator. So similar program, similar application, phase 3 of the basically water fire suppression system that we've been implementing, and we've been successful with grant funding for the first 2 phases.
Dr. Steer?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve entering into, wrong one, that the Alberni-Clayoquot, I want to get to that one too, that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors support the grant funding application to British Columbia Air Access Program for the purchase and installation of backup generator at Long Beach Airport.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McEwen. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Okay, next up is item F. Jenny, do you want to introduce this? And then we'll go right to Dr. Steer.
Excellent. Yes, so we are looking to enter into a 10-year agreement with the Long Beach Golf Course. This has gone to the West Coast Committee, and this is a resolution coming from them. We have been working towards moving away from 3-year renewals and getting them up to market rate, and this agreement will do exactly that. Happy to answer any questions.
It was negotiated, correct?
We did a stepped increase from where they were to an interim, and we will be at full market rate for this agreement.
Thank you. Dr. Steer?
I'd like to make a motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve entering into a 10-year lease agreement with the Long Beach Golf Course and Campground for lease lot L5L20240001 at market rate, which is $56,300 per year, effective the 1st of April 2024, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the lease on behalf of the regional district.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Half-heartedly. Item G, request for decision regarding the West Coast Landfill Operations Contract. Sherry, go ahead.
Thank you. So we issued an RFP for proponents to bid for operating our landfill. We have, since 2011, been having Barry and Vale operate our West Coast landfill. We've had a very good working relationship with them. When we issued the RFP, we received 1 bid, and that was from Barry and Vale. The price that they have submitted is very comparable to what we've already been paying for our operational costs in 2023. Our annual costs were just over 618,000, and the proposed bid was 635 for 2024, which is in line with inflation. We strongly recommend that we continue working and building on our excellent relationship with Barry and Vail at this competitive price. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Dr. Steer.
I'd like to make the motion that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the West Coast Landfill Operations contract to Barry and Vail Contracting in the amount of $3,176,100, excluding GST, for a 5-year term, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the West Coast Landfill Operation contract on behalf of the Regional District.
Thank you. Seconded by Dr. Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to item H, which is a request for decision regarding the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw F1162. Terry, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is just an annual request for a bylaw in case we need overdraft during the year, as we anticipate our revenues coming in early August, and just looking for 4 readings of the bylaw. Thank you.
Thanks. Would anyone like to endeavor the 4 readings? Director Roth, go ahead.
Should I do them one at a time?
You can read up the first one, then we just do second, third, and adoption.
Okay. I move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to the bylaw cited as Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number F1162, 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Boyko. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
I move second reading.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
Third reading.
We have a seconder. Third reading. Thank you, Director Sparrow. Comments? All those in favor? Motion carried.
And I move that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors adopt bylaw cited as Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number F1162, 2024.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us into planning matters. And we are into 9.1A, the development variance application. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, thank you. So this is a development variance application for 7636 Bell Road. The board had initially reviewed this application on December 13th, and notices have been sent out as per the Local Government Act to neighboring properties. The purpose of the variance is to vary the rear yard setback to allow an addition to the existing single-family dwelling, and staff recommends that the board issue the variance, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Penny's not here, so someone's going to do it. Dr. Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Make a motion that the Board of Directors issue development variance permit DVD 23008.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Roth. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? This is just for electoral area directors. And motion carried. Thank you. All right, item B, a rezoning application for Beaver Creek. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, thank you. This is a rezoning application for 6399 Walker Road. The owners have applied to rezone this 4-acre property to RA3 to facilitate a subdivision. A public hearing was held on November 28th, and third reading was given on December 13th. All conditions of rezoning have now been met, and we recommend that the bylaw be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is for Beaver Creek. Dr. Roth?
I'd like to move that bylaw P1474, Regional District of Alberni-Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be adopted.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, item C, rezoning application for Beaver Creek. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, thank you. And just before I go into this application, just a little bit of background. I participated in a webinar with other planning staff put on by the province regarding the legislative changes around, and part of it was about the public hearing process when when an application complies with the official community plan. And so this legislation, because this bylaw hasn't had first reading, the new legislation applies. And so this is one where a public hearing is not permitted to be held, basically. And there, we will be bringing a report to the board at the first meeting in February to sort of highlight all of the changes, explain them in detail, provide options. This does fall within the board's, policy, that we've been operating under the last year about not having a public hearing. So I just wanted to flag that for this one, because how it's presented is a little bit different than how we have been presenting it. And then if you would like, I expect there's some questions about this, but I'll run through the application, just a quick overview, and then answer any questions if that's all right. Okay, so the owner is applying to rezone two portions of this property to RA2 and RA3 to facilitate a subdivision. The intent would be to create 4 new lots. The areas being rezoned are outside the agricultural land reserve. The Beaver Creek Advisory Planning Commission reviewed this application on December 19th and supported moving forward. And we recommend that the board proceed with notice under Section 467 of the Local Government Act, and I'm happy to answer any questions now. Thank you.
Thanks. Director Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is not necessarily about this application, although that density does seem fairly small for the Beaver Creek rural area. What you just said was, in what we've been doing with this whole public hearing thing is, the board can request one if it's something that they want, or something that's controversial, or something that the public really wants to talk about. What you're saying now is that is no longer an option. Is that what you're formally saying? Thank you.
Yes, that was part of our presentation yesterday, is that the legislative changes by the province, where the official community plan allows the resident, and it only applies to residential uses, but where it allows the residential use that's being proposed, a public hearing isn't permitted to be held. There's still the notification requirements. The board still makes a decision. There's the opportunity for public input through letters, etc. There were certainly questions around what about other opportunities for public input, and I think that would be the intent for the report that we'll bring back in February, just outlining all of the options for the board.
Thank you for the clarification, Mike.
I'd like to move that the Board of Directors consider first reading of bylaw P1487, Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw at a future date, and that notice be given in accordance with Section 467 of the Local Government Act.
I think it's just the one.
That the Board of Directors confirm that adoption of bylaw P1487 is subject to confirmation from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner, that the portion of the property to be rezoned is capable of supporting on-site sewage disposal to a minimum of 0.24 hectare density and meeting technical referral agency requirements.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Director Siga. Any comments? We may want some sort of indicator for the fact that this is that new provincial regulation coming in, just as a whenever it's introduced. Yeah. I think that's it. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, that's it. That brings us to
Sorry, just point of order. Fire Smart, Randy's actually here for a verbal report. It just wasn't noted on the agenda.
I'm ready. So please go ahead. Is it Thone? Cool.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry to extend a fairly lengthy meeting, but I'll be brief. I'm here today to speak to you about our Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And for those of you who may not be aware, this plan has been in existence going back to 2010. where it covered the Alberni Valley, and then through updates and review, grew to include the Bamfield area. Other than the author of this document and probably a few people that received this report when it came into being in 2019, there's probably not a lot of you that read through it. So basically, the idea of a community wildfire protection plan came out of the severe fire season that they had in 2003, and with the aim of developing some strategic recommendations to improve safety and reduce the risk of damage to property from wildfire. This current plan, like I mentioned, was updated in 2019, and it basically provides the framework for our current FireSmart grant project. So I'll skip section 1 because it's the introduction portion. No recommendations from that area. The document is broken down into 48 recommendations, and I'll just note that if you look at the table that includes the recommendations, they also include which jurisdiction would be responsible for it. So whether it's the city, the regional district, etc. The area of interest is a term that you'll probably hear a lot moving forward in wildfire speak. And so our area of interest here is, again, the Alberni Valley and Bamfield. And it may be helpful to note that through our last year's FireSmart grant, we completed a community wildfire plan for the Long Beach electoral area, which had not had one previously. There's 7 recommendations in this section to achieve the objective listed there. And probably the biggest thing that highlights what we're doing in this area is the fact that both the regional district and the city are in the process of reviewing and updating their OCPs. And through that process, the trickle-down effect of updating bylaws and other policies will achieve these recommendations. In section 3, values at risk, there's 3 recommendations in this area to achieve the objective of protecting our critical infrastructure. And as you probably have heard from previously from Karen Freedy and others talking about the updates to the Emergency Management Act, that's highlighted significantly in that legislation. So that was one area that we focused on early in our FireSmart grant projects, going back to 2020, where we started to engage with registered professionals to complete assessments of our critical infrastructure. The definition of critical infrastructure has changed throughout the process. Initially, it was things that the community needed to operate their emergency operations, as well as provide for the community. So things like water infrastructure, emergency operation centers, fire departments, that sort of thing. And it's expanded a fair bit. And so we've continued to complete assessments on critical infrastructure, both within the city, the ACRD, and the 2 First Nations that are our grant partners. At the end of this current grant project, we will have completed a first round of all the critical infrastructure. Through these assessments, we've identified objectives that needed to be addressed, and in our last grant project and in this current one, we have received funding to complete some of that work, and that will be ongoing. And it should be noted that with critical infrastructure work, there is some construction work that happens in terms of updates to buildings or the structure itself, but the majority of it is vegetation management around that infrastructure. And the wonderful thing about vegetation is that when you prune it or cut it, it likes to grow back. So this will develop into a maintenance cycle throughout the duration. In section 4, wildfire threat and risk, there's one recommendation. It's a short and simple statement that carries a whole ton of freight in this particular area. Mitigate wildfire threat on private land. As we all know, that's a challenge in this area when you start talking about municipal crown or municipal owned land, regional land, provincial crown, federal crown, First Nations. There's a lot of players that have to come to the table to have a discussion about this. within Fire Smart, there's nothing that's regulatory. We can't go onto somebody's land and force them to do something they don't want to do. Section 5, risk management and mitigation. There's 30 recommendations in this area, and this is where the real meat and potatoes of the plan come together. Talking about fuel treatments and wildfire threat reducing wildfire threat through fuel management, where we've really achieved a number of our recommendations in this area. And of the 30, just over 20 are what I would consider either complete or in progress. So public education program, this position that I'm in, a Fire Smart position, funding for homeowner rebates, curbside pickup of vegetative matter from properties, and any number of other initiatives that we got going. We've just adopted a trail plan for Log Train Trail, and that was one of the recommendations, things like that. So we've got a lot of work in this area that's ongoing. Of the recommendations that aren't complete, they're really part of that trickle-down effect of things like the updates to OCPs and bylaw updates and that sort of thing, and or are the responsibility of entities that we don't have control over. Section 6, wildfire response resources. We already had a great start in this area prior to these plans coming together. There's 7 recommendations in this area, and this talks about wildfire equipment and training, Fire Smart initiatives, and protection for municipal infrastructure. So the Alberni Valley Fire Departments have a great working relationship with BC Wildfire, including cross-training for structural firefighters to do wildfire firefighting. The majority of our valley departments have developed sprinkler protection resources and other equipment. They work well together through mutual aid agreements and automatic aid agreements. So we've really achieved some great things in this area. And as funding comes available through grants, et cetera, accessing more training, different training, that sort of thing is ongoing. So community wildfire resiliency planning, a little bit different than CWPP. So in 2003, Fire Smart was a concept that existed in Canada, but it wasn't really well known or even on the landscape here in BC. Community wildfire resiliency plans are the sort of the second generation of this, and they incorporate the Fire Smart disciplines. So education, legislation, and planning, et cetera, you can read there. This plan is due, this current community wildfire protection plan is due for review and updating in our next grant cycle, so in 2025. And very likely it'll be converted into a CWRP. It's important to note that the current funding for Fire Smart grants coming from the Community Resiliency Investment Fund is strongly tied to these disciplines. And so the grant application is tied to those disciplines. And so then, therefore, it makes sense to convert this plan into a CWRP. Our next steps, as I just mentioned, we're going to update our plan. This current grant project ends in March of 2025, and work to develop our application for the next grant is already starting. The Fire Smart grant process has switched from a 1-year term to a 2-year term, which provides some stability in terms of a Fire Smart position, that sort of thing. But along with that comes a lot more planning. And as I mentioned, we'll be at the end of our assessments of our critical infrastructure. We may have some work to do, but they'll likely be very small projects. And so then the next big ticket item that we'll be taking on is fuel management in our interface areas. And with that comes bringing all those players I mentioned before to the table to have a conversation. So I've listed there the 3 things that will be required to move forward to qualify for that funding. Fire Smart position, i.e. me, participate in a community Fire Smart resiliency committee. Last year, we started the first of these meetings where we created a community fire ACRD Community Fire Smart Resiliency Network that includes all the 10 First Nations within the regional district were invited, Ucluelet, Tofino City, as well as others. And now we're going to expand it to include, community forests, private land managers, hydro, Fortis, and other players that need to come to the table, including federal parks and provincial parks. And it's a great start. It's a good place for everybody to come together and have a conversation about regional goals. I think we learned from the Cameron Bluffs fire that a few hectare fire beside a kilometer or two of highway really changed the perspective about wildfire in this area. And then we have to have a community wildfire plan that's current and being used as part of our planning. I'll just finish with, before I conclude, I'll just finish with a comment. There's a wildfire resiliency and prevention is a big topic, particularly in the States. And National Fire Protection Agency developed a resource for communities to learn about building wildfire resiliency into the community. And the doctor in charge of the project is providing some commentary during the video, and his comment is if the authorities with all the resources and equipment and people that they have available cannot control or stop a wildfire from entering the community and burning it down, what is an individual property owner going to be able to do with the little resources and things that they have available to them? And his comment is that actually they can do a lot, because it's really the little things that make the biggest difference. A little ember moving along ahead of a fire, landing in some lightweight and intermediate fuels that are on or near your home will definitely catch on fire and develop the heat that's needed to transition into the building. If your house will not catch on fire, it won't burn to the ground. And so while we're doing all these other things like fuel management in the bigger areas and protecting other things, the little things that you do immediately and on and around your property are the most important. There's no one single solution or group of solutions that's going to fix this, and it takes everybody coming to the table to make this work. So I thought it would be important to bring this to you, give you a quick update on where we're at with this, and let you know that as we enter the second year of this current grant, that we are making steps and progress on this plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? Dr. Sparrow, go ahead. And if you could stop sharing, that would be good.
All good. There you go. Good presentation there, Randy. I like it. It's very good. One thing you brought up there was the fact that you cut down the vegetation, but it will grow back. And one of the things I've asked for is there a way to access a chipping program through the grant so we can get people that have small limbs to chip them before they take them? Because if they're small enough, they can go to a processor here, but if they're bigger than that, we think the landfill and we charge. Is there a way of using your grant money to chip them down so we can access it?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair to you, we have a program in place called the Curbside Pickup. So any resident within the Alberni Valley and the 2 First Nations are able to contact us, and we have a contractor that will go and pick up any pruning and woody debris up to 4 inches in diameter, and we'll take 2 loads of that away for free. Currently, the program is accessed probably more so by folks that are in the more urban residential, so city area, where they don't have the ability to move that material from their property, and less so in the region. But all the way across the board, we've had good use of the program prior to me being here, and then as well during.
Go ahead.
And who do they contact? You, or what's the contact number?
Well, we promote the program through our social media platforms, as well as in print media, local print as well.
And so they can contact the regional district office through the main office number at 250-720-2700. Or they're welcome to email me at firesmart@acrd.bc.ca. And I'm happy to make those arrangements for the contractor to come pick them up.
All right, thank you. Next up is Dr. Steer and then Director Beckett.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I really want to thank you, Randy, for this presentation. It's dear to my heart. My son has worked for the BC Wildfire Service for the last couple of years, and that conversation around that urban wildfire interface, critically important. And I just want to thank you guys for the work you're doing and continue doing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And Dr. Beckett.
Thank you, Chair. Randy, I can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing in Banfield. It inspires not only the Banfield Fire Department, SD70, and those facilities that you've been working with, but it inspires the local homeowners to take action. I'd be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge Director Sparrow's comments about a chipper and how beneficial that could be for the more rural communities, especially the west side of Banfield. That'd be very interesting to see what that would look like from a standpoint of preventative, educational, and something that the community could access to clean up. So thanks, Mike, for bringing that up. And Randy, if you wouldn't mind looking into that a little bit further, I'd appreciate it. I'm sure other rural communities would as well. Thank you.
Through the chair to you, I can provide a brief comment to that. That is actually one of our primary objectives for the more rural areas, is to figure out a way for those folks to manage that debris that's on their property. The challenge with Banfield and the work that was happening on the road last year made achieving that objective very challenging. Unfortunately, the rules around the grant structure are that if we're going to collect that material and chip it, we have to put it somewhere where it isn't. We're not moving the hazard from one area and placing it in another. And so I've done a fair bit of legwork, and I've found a couple places for the material to go, in addition to our solid waste area where they're achieving some great things with composting some of that material. But the challenge has been making it move from, the west side to the east side is one of the biggest challenges, and then from Banfield to town. There are some other initiatives out there, including a commercial composting system, and that might be an answer for the west side if there's an area where that makes sense. I don't know, but nothing's off the table right now. We're looking at all solutions.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments or questions? So, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation. It's very informative. Are we able to get the deck posted online with the materials if it isn't already? All right, great. Okay, so could we have a motion to receive the staff reports? Thank you, Director Brock.
Terry. We have Terry.
BC assessment. Oh, is that a verbal report? I thought that was just an attached item.
Yeah, just to receive. Terry's online if anybody has any questions. So
sorry. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And seconded by, thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion carried. Okay. Do we want to contemplate? Actually, no, let's power through this and then we can have a motion or a break before the in-camera. So let's move to area reports. Electoral Area A, Banfield. Dr. Beckett, any reports?
Yes, thank you. Just want to do a shout out to BC Hydro Banfield, and I know Annaqua to some degree has been impacted by the storms with power failures. This last 24 hours, the west side in Banfield's been completely out. East side was back on yesterday, and all day helicopters been going in and out, working to get the hydro back on. And again, I just can't say enough about the effort to inform the community as to what's going on, and then actually making the repairs. I'd like to also thank our staff, Jenny, and our consultants for their work to date on the public consultation process relating to the wastewater sewage project. I appreciate everyone's efforts on that. And finally, and I didn't bring it up in staff report 10.1A, the 2024 assessment values. But it's I'll probably do an offline discussion with Jenny, noting that Banfield's overall change was an increase of 18.86%, one of the highest in the region. And we can all speculate as to why that happened, but certainly, it is a bit of a concern, for us folks that are having to pay the increase. That's my report. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that. Brings us to electoral area B, Beaufort. Dr. Book.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to Jenny and the Parks team for coming to a resolution on the Log Train Trail plan. Now we have a good defined path moving forward. Now we're going to execute it and carry on. Beaufort will be hosting a town hall in a week and a half, January 21st, 2 p.m. Beaver Creek Hall. Beaver Creek people will also be there. Some of the topics we'll be talking about is Clark Center referendum, making sure everyone's up to date on Log Train Trail, planning processes, OCP, and then bylaw updates, and make sure we're getting a good mandate from the public on how to move forward. Everyone's welcome to attend. Usually get 4 or 5 directors there. It's a good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dr. Siga, electoral area C. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Nothing to report.
Electoral area D, Dr. Cote is not here. E, Dr. Roth.
First, I'd like to thank Beaver Creek's alternate director, Colin Fun, for taking my seat at the boardroom table the past couple of months. Colin made good decisions, and they were all in the best interest of Beaver Creek. Secondly, I'd like to publicly thank West Coast General Hospital and Nanaimo General Hospital, or Nanaimo Regional General Hospital, for providing me with excellent care. On November 26th, I injured my arm in a fall. All in all, the experience was really good, despite my injuries. Only a few more weeks in the cast and I'll be good to go. And then finally, as Fred has said, we're hosting, or Beaufort's hosting another town hall meeting on Sunday, January 21st, and I'm just hoping that Beaver Creek residents will attend. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Area F, Cherry Creek, Dr. Sparrow.
Well, thank you for that. It's been pretty quiet at Cherry Creek the last little while. I am getting together for our town hall meeting to get through things. I think this year will be interesting on Cherry Creek with a few ideas coming up and referendums and that. So I'm trying to get a presentation put together to address most of their concerns. I can't go through all of it because the list is too long and arduous right now, but as we address it, I will bring facts together and see how their response is. But look forward to it's February 11th at 2 p.m. It's a Sunday, so we'll see what happens. Could be fun.
Great, thank you. Next up is City of Port Alberni, Dr. Minions. Anything? Then we'll go to 3, 2, 1. Okay, and Dr. Haggard.
Thank you. Since our last board meeting, Matthews West has been named as the preferred developer for the Somas property. They're a very well-known developer and have done a very similar development on the waterfront of Squamish. They have a really good reputation in the development world, so we anticipate that this will increase interest from other developers that want to come to our community. So I think now the challenge is going to be how we manage our growth. Our expected growth is going to come out of this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. District of Tofino, Dr. Steer.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple notes here. It's been quiet in one way and very busy in another. Our wastewater treatment plant construction is full on, still on time, still on budget, but the progress has been phenomenal to see there. I did want to do a shout out to the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District in terms of Tofino Housing Corporation, and we're in the process right now. Applications have been opened for the next phase of our housing units. That's 37 units at the Headwaters South. It is there is an eligibility requirements, and one of the eligibility requirements is that people have lived in the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District for the last 24 of 36 months. So that there is some opportunity for people within our region. That would be the West Coast, of course, and even into Port Alberni, where we've lost some people to Port Alberni because they've had to move there because of no accommodation there. So I don't know if there's a possibility for staff to provide a link to the Tofino Housing Corporation and the potential for accessing those applications for that development. Those applications became available starting, I think it was January 2nd, and will go on. I can't remember the exact dates, but there is a time frame within there. The other good news about that is that the projected move-in date is the beginning of May of this year. So great news there. And I did want to reiterate again that as Director Beckett pointed out, BC Assessments did come in once again. It is always a concern when I see the values that are associated with the properties in Tofino and the implications it has from a taxation perspective in terms of the shared services that we have in our region. So I did want to bring that up, and that's about all I have.
Great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to District of Ucluelet. Director McEwen.
Thank you. We began our budget process on Monday. We had a 4-hour first budget meeting, so we're thick into it now. And we've been without a chief financial officer for 7 or 8 months. So our CAO is actually wearing that hat until we can recruit a new one. And he's doing a great job of it, I must say. And as I mentioned earlier, we are anticipating a brand new medical clinic. And that's really exciting, just waiting for Island Health to make the official announcement. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Huu-ay-aht. So on the Huu-ay-aht side of things, since our last update, we've had our People's Assembly and we're moving forward with budgeting. So we're looking to ensure that we continue having momentum in regards to not only our forestry endeavors, but taking advantage of the reason why the assessments in Bamfield went up quite a bit, as well as ensuring that we are continuing to work together on our master plan with ACRD and the company that we've chosen to work with, which is Forum Asset Management. And so at some point in the near future, it's likely that they'll reach out to have meetings with Director Beckett and staff at the ACRD. From there, I think that's about it. Thank you. Next up is the Tokwat Nation. Dr. Johnson, any updates?
Afternoon. So we are without our Director of Operations, so we're looking forward to some interviews pretty soon. So we might have a new one by April 1st. We are working on our budget now, and that's about it.
Thank you very much. That brings us to Ho-Chukwu Tribe. Thank you and welcome officially, Mariah. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I currently don't have a whole lot to let everyone know of and to report on other than just our annual election, or sorry, not annual, we do our 4-year election. So our chief counselor has changed as well as all of our legislative and executive positions. Those seats are now filled. We are coming into our strategic planning for the year, and there will be more to come as I am in the midst of getting appraised, and there will be more after we meet all together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, we have the Plutohat government. Ivana, please go ahead.
Hi. A couple updates starting for this year. We are going to be welcoming a new director of operations at the government office in Ucluelet, and her name is Anita Schramm. Her starting date is January 22nd. And we also have 4 other positions that are recently announced for opening, and we're looking for an infrastructure manager and a HR manager and an administrative assistant to the director of operations and a position open in the child care daycare. So those are the new and upcoming changes and opportunities. That's all for me. Thank you.
Any further reports? Okay, seeing none, we're going to have a motion to receive. Thank you, Dr. Roth, seconded by Dr. Sparrow. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried. All right, there is no unfinished business, nor is there any late business. question period. I would note that we don't have anyone left in the gallery. Are there any comments or questions on responses?
So there's no emails received and no questions in Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that'll bring us into a motion to recess so that we can go into the hospital district meeting. Do we have a motion to do so? Thank you, Director Siga, seconded by Director Roth. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair Jack. I'd like to call the meeting of the Hospital District Board of Directors. And I would like to also recognize that we were conducting this meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Shuswap and Pachacet First Nations, and we're grateful for the opportunity to do so. I'd like to also recognize we have directors calling in from other territories, and I'd like to acknowledge those nations as well and express our gratitude. We have an agenda in front of us. Is there any additions?
No additions from me.
Any additions from directors? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Director Roth, seconded by Director Boyko. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We have minutes from the Board of Directors meeting held on December 13th. Could I get a motion? Is there any errors or omissions?
I'll move adoptions with the corrections for the alternate director.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder? Seconded by Director Roth. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. No petitions, no correspondence for action, correspondence for information. We have a couple items from Island Health. We have the 2022-2023 annual report. We have a news release from the West Coast General Hospital to introduce the cutting-edge CT scanner. And could I get a motion this correspondence be received for information? Moved by Director Roth, seconded by Director Jack. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. So now on to reports.
Excuse me, sorry, Debbie. I just had a comment around the correspondence and the annual report from Island Health. I think it's a document that's really well worth reading for the regional district government here to be well informed of what it is that we finance. And the CT scanner is an excellent example of where the money goes in terms of the capital commitments that we make as a regional hospital board. And that's about $840,000 that we contributed to that incredibly important piece of equipment for the West Coast General Hospital. So it leads us to those discussions around the capital expenditures that we approve here at the board. It's not just a rubber stamp. We really need to think about and be able to participate in these kinds of conversations to deliver the healthcare that is important to our region. We had a great presentation from Island Health to explain to us the capital process for potentially a new hospital on the West Coast. So I think it's important for us to read those reports and to be well informed of what is going on from a healthcare perspective in our region. I'll just leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, Director Steer. Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you very much. I agree with Director Steer totally. It would be helpful for directors if the annual report was provided in a much easier format rather than having to type in a whole hyperlink, just for future reference, so we could click on it and the public would have much easier access to it.
Thank you. Reports. Banfield Health Center Director Beckett.
No report, ma'am.
Alberni Clayoquot Continued Care Society Director Sega.
Thank you. The board of the Alberni Clayoquot Continuing Care Society has been very active in there's been a shift in management, and I think everybody's probably aware. And the board has been, it's a good, strong board, and I look forward to some good changes.
Thank you. Tofino General Hospital, Dr. Steer.
Yeah, thank you. I think the presentation today from Island Health, Diane McCabe, was informative for us. That's about all there is to do. That process is underway. I've been told it's been underway for a while, and I just wanted to get a little more detail to be provided in terms of that consultation process at the concept phase. I talked to the site director Saragogo. They're well informed of the process going on now. So we're looking forward for that. I'd like to see that process expedited, as she pointed out, with the budget process coming. We would hopefully have that concept plan in place for the provincial government to start moving towards that business planning phase. And we would like to see that definitely there before May and June. And that's about it.
Thank you, Director Steer. Alberta Quayquot Health Network, Director Cote is not here, but I can comment saying that in December, the members got together and worked on a draft strategic plan to follow for the next 5 years. So our coordinator will be working on presenting that to our committee, hopefully starting at our next meeting in January. West Coast General Hospital, no report. Is there any other reports from anyone? Seeing none, can I get a motion that the Regional Hospital Board of Directors receive reports A through G? Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Jack. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Any questions from the public? Heather?
No questions from the public in email and none in Zoom. Thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sega. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Reconvening. Excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. So we are going to be moving in camera for one item. So, sorry. So I'll read out the motion and move it as per the community charter under sections 91J. Information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and number 2, 21(1)(c)(1) of FOIPA, which would harm significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the negotiating position of a third party. So that is the motion, and I'll move that. Seconded by Director Roth. Any comments? See none. All those in favor?